The year 2025 was supposed to be a year of recovery. It was meant to be a time when the world would finally find its footing after years of turbulence. Global leaders spoke of stability, cooperation, a return to predictability. Economies were slowly mending, supply chains were being rebuilt, and there was a general sense of cautious optimism in the air. People around the globe were looking forward to a period of calm, a chance to breathe after the relentless pace of change and crisis. But history, as it often does, had other plans. What we got was not calm, but a storm. A storm that originated in the east and swept across the entire planet, reshaping everything it touched. The previous year, 2024, had ended with a familiar set of challenges. The war in Ukraine continued to grind on, tensions in the Middle East remained high, and nations everywhere grappled with the lingering economic effects of the pandemic. In the United States, a newly re-elected President Trump was preparing for his second term, promising an America First agenda that kept allies and adversaries on edge. Most analysts predicted that the major global storylines would continue along these well-worn tracks. China, while always a major player, was seen as facing its own internal struggles, a slowing economy, a property crisis, and demographic headwinds. The world was watching China, but it was not expecting a revolution. Instead of the anticipated slowdown, what emerged from Beijing was a display of ambition and power that caught even the most seasoned observers by surprise. It was as if a switch had been flipped. The careful, incremental rise of the past few decades was replaced by a series of bold, decisive, and often aggressive actions. These were not minor policy adjustments, they were seismic shifts that sent shockwaves through international markets, diplomatic channels, and military headquarters. The world, which had been preoccupied with its own problems, was suddenly forced to turn its full attention eastward. The year had barely begun, and already the script had been completely rewritten. This series of events was not a random collection of incidents. It was a coordinated symphony of strategic moves, from the laboratories of its tech giants to the disputed waters of the South China Sea, the trading floors of Shanghai to the grand military parades in Tiananmen Square. A clear and powerful message was being sent. China was no longer just rising, it had arrived, and it was ready to claim a central role in shaping the 21st century, whether the rest of the world was ready or not. 2025 became the year the world woke up to a new reality, a reality defined by the undeniable and often unsettling power of a resurgent China. The global order that had defined the post-Cold War era was built on a foundation of American leadership and Western-led institutions. For decades, this framework provided a sense of structure to international relations. The US dollar was the undisputed king of currencies. Silicon Valley was the engine of technological innovation, and the US Navy guaranteed the freedom of the seas. This was the world as we knew it. But in 2025, the cracks finally began to shatter. They presented a clear and compelling alternative. When its scientists unveiled a breakthrough in artificial intelligence, it challenged Silicon Valley's supremacy. When its government bond market was promoted as a safe haven, it chipped away at the US dollar's dominance. When its navy asserted control over vast swaths of the South China Sea, it confronted the principle of free navigation. Each move was a statement that the old rules no longer exclusively applied. The reactions from world leaders were a mix of disbelief, alarm, and grudging admiration. In Washington, the administration responded with bluster, escalating tariffs and vowing to put America first. In Brussels, European leaders scrambled for unity, torn between economic ties to China and security ties to the United States. In developing nations across Asia, Africa, and Latin America, the reaction was more complex. Many saw China's rise as an opportunity, a new source of investment, technology, and a partner without Western political conditions. The world was no longer unipolar or even bipolar. It was becoming truly multipolar, with a new center of gravity. The year began with the tech world fixated on the familiar giants of Silicon Valley. Google, Microsoft, OpenAI locked in a fierce public battle for AI supremacy. Most Western analysts believed that China, while making progress, was still several years behind. They pointed to US export controls on advanced semiconductors. The assumption was clear: the future of artificial intelligence would be designed in California. This comfortable assumption was shattered on a cold Tuesday in March 2025. The announcement came not from a state-owned behemoth, but from a relatively low-profile Beijing-based company called DeepSeek. In a quiet press release, followed by a stunning live demonstration, DeepSeek unveiled its new AI model, Kunlun. The model wasn't just an improvement, it was a quantum leap. It could write flawless, complex code in seconds. It could diagnose rare diseases from simple medical scans with near-perfect accuracy. It could compose music indistinguishable from human masters. What made the Kunlun breakthrough so profound was not just its capabilities but how it was achieved. DeepSeek revealed it had developed a new type of chip architecture and a revolutionary software framework that allowed it to train massive models with far greater efficiency. This meant they had effectively bypassed the American-led semiconductor sanctions. They had not copied Western technology, they had innovated their way around the blockade. This was China's Sputnik moment. The shockwaves from the Kunlun announcement hit Silicon Valley like a physical impact. The mood in the sprawling campuses of Google, Apple, and Meta shifted overnight from confident ambition to, well, panicked urgency. Leaked internal memos spoke of a code red situation. The narrative that they were years ahead of their Chinese counterparts had been utterly demolished in a single day. The problem was not just one of pride, it was a direct threat to their business models and future viability. The talent war also intensified dramatically. The Beijing-based company immediately launched an aggressive global recruitment drive. The brain drain, once a flow towards the West, was threatening to reverse. In Washington, the news was met with alarm and a flurry of finger-pointing. Lawmakers demanded to know how this could have happened. The consensus was grim. They had underestimated China's ability to innovate under pressure. This was about more than stock prices. It was about global power. AI is a foundational layer for everything. The nation leading AI gained strategic advantage across domains. AI was the new currency of power. China had minted a vast fortune. While the world was still reeling from the DeepSeek AI shock, China's next move unfolded not in the digital realm, but on the high seas. For decades, Beijing had asserted its claim over nearly the entire South China Sea through its controversial Nine-Dash Line. This claim was contested by Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, and Brunei. Despite this, China had been steadily building up its presence, turning submerged reefs into militarized artificial islands, complete with runways and missile batteries. It was a slow, creeping assertion of control, but in the spring of 2025, the slicing stopped, and the hammer fell. Without warning, Beijing declared the Nine-Dash Line was no longer just historical but a formal national border. The declaration was followed by a massive naval deployment. The ambiguous line had become a hard, non-negotiable border backed by the full might of the PLA Navy. The centerpiece of China's audacious maritime push was its swift and decisive action in the disputed Spratly Islands. In a meticulously planned operation, China moved to end this stalemate permanently. Special forces from the Plan Marine Corps simultaneously landed on and seized a dozen small islets that were claimed by the Philippines and Vietnam. The small garrisons of Filipino and Vietnamese fishermen or soldiers on nearby features were simply overwhelmed and blockaded. The Philippines, a U.S. treaty ally, immediately invoked its Mutual Defense Treaty and called for American assistance. The State Council of China approved the creation of the Huangyan Island National Nature Reserve in the disputed Scarborough Shoal claimed by the Philippines on September 10. Just as the world was trying to process the geopolitical implications, CNOOC made a blockbuster announcement: had discovered a massive oil field and a massive natural gas field. The initial estimates were staggering. The discovery provided a powerful economic justification for China's military actions. Beijing's narrative was clear: not seizing barren rocks, securing vital national resources for future prosperity and energy security. As tensions simmered, another front in the US-China rivalry reignited with explosive force. In a fiery early-morning tweet storm, he declared that the old trade deal was dead and announced a new sweeping round of tariffs. President Trump increased tariffs on Chinese exports to the United States to 104% on April 9, prompting China to impose an 84% tariff on American imports. Earlier on February 1st, Trump imposed a 10% tariff on imports from China, leading China to impose export controls and increase tariffs on certain American imports in retaliation. Beijing's reaction was swift and defiant. They also placed an immediate export ban on rare earth minerals. China was weaponizing its dominance of these critical resources. The immediate effect of the renewed tariff war was chaos in global supply chains. The great decoupling was now happening in real time. Brutal. Product shortages on American shelves. Prices climbed. As autumn leaves began to turn, China orchestrated its most potent display of national confidence yet. To celebrate the 76th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic, Beijing announced a massive Victory Day parade. The event was meticulously planned to be a spectacle of overwhelming power. The parade began with an awesome display of precision and discipline, but the intended audience extended far beyond China's borders. The scale and sophistication of the parade were a stark signal to rivals and allies alike. For neighboring countries like Vietnam and the Philippines, it was a chilling reminder of the military imbalance they faced. The true centerpiece of the parade was the unveiling of new, previously unseen weapon systems. The most significant of these was the DF-27, a new type of hypersonic glide vehicle. Hypersonic weapons can maneuver at more than 5 times the speed of sound, making them virtually impossible to intercept. The DF-27, nicknamed the Carrier Killer, was a direct threat to this dominance. The primary tool of American power projection was now vulnerable. Alongside the DF-27 was another shocking debut, the DF-ZF, a global-range hypersonic weapon. It was a strategic weapon that bypassed all existing early warning radars and defense shields. China unveiled its new Z-20T assault helicopter during the Grand Military Parade. The display of these advanced systems was a direct consequence of China's AI breakthrough. This highlighted a terrifying synergy. China's commercial tech revolution was directly fueling its military modernization. As 2025 drew to a close, China unveiled another, softer dimension of its national ambition. In February, all eyes turned to Harbin as it hosted the 9th Asian Winter Games. Once competitions began, it became clear China's investment went far beyond ceremonies. Chinese athletes started to dominate the medal tables and left rivals like Japan and South Korea far behind. It was honestly a carefully crafted exercise in soft power. This was a deliberate attempt to shape global perceptions and counter the negative press from the West. DeepSeek founder Liang Wenfeng got a coveted seat at a February meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping and private sector leaders, alongside luminaries like Alibaba founder Jack Ma and Huawei founder Ren Zhengfei. In 2025, Beijing brought this era of ambiguity to a decisive and abrupt end. The 9-dash line became a hard border. The AI race became a direct confrontation. The trade relationship became an economic war. This new clarity presents the world, and particularly the United States, with a set of stark and uncomfortable choices. The central question is no longer how to integrate China into the existing global order, but how to coexist and compete. As we look back on the pivotal year of 2025, it is clear that we have entered a new era of global history. The unipolar moment is definitively over. The world is now contending with 2 global superpowers with fundamentally different political systems, economic models, and visions for the future. Unlike the Cold War, today's rivalry exists within a deeply integrated global system. The pain of the tariff war demonstrated that a full decoupling would be catastrophic for everyone. This shared vulnerability could, paradoxically, serve as a powerful force for restraint. The year 2025 was a wake-up call. It was a year of shocks, triumphs, and confrontations that laid bare the new contours of global power. It was the year that China, through a series of bold and calculated moves, announced its arrival as a comprehensive superpower. The world has been put on notice. The old maps no longer apply and the old rules are being rewritten. We are all now living in the new reality that China built, and the challenge of navigating this unfamiliar landscape has only just begun. The story of 2025 is over, but the era it ushered in is just dawning.